Ms. Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few questions. I believe from ACLU, we're articulating the fact that you are upholding a faith-based institution's constitutional right to exercise the principles of their faith, whether or not we may agree or disagree with those principles. And so you're trying to find a creative way to ensure that there isn't discrimination while at the same time protecting that constitutional right. So I appreciate that. My concern is, I have a couple questions, but my overriding concern is similar to what was just articulated, is the penalty being properly placed? So the penalty is not on the institution per se. The penalty is on the student who will no longer be able to receive a Cal Grant. And I guess why I'm so concerned about that is, number one, as we just talked about earlier today, we don't have enough slots in our CSUs and UCs, in our public universities. There simply are not enough slots to meet the needs of California students today. We already have a shortage of university slots to meet the need of students who are fully eligible, not to mention those who may not be fully eligible that are going to private institutions instead. So that's one of my concerns. And second, it would have a dramatic effect on students at many of these universities, because at some of them, one in the Central Valley, for example, 50% of their students are on a Cal Grant, 50%. And almost 3/4 of their students are first-generation college students. And so my concern is, again, is the penalty properly placed, or would something else be more appropriate? And then my second question was, do we as a state, and I don't know the answer to this, do we as a state have the jurisdiction and the ability to take away the federal right of an institution to seek a Title IX exemption?
Thank you very much for the concerns. The first issue to address the concern about the Cal Grants for the student, it's actually portable, which is to say that it can follow the student. And I just want to highlight, this is one of the shortest bills I've ever seen. I mean, it's not even a full page when you combine the first and front. And this is a voluntary program. The Cal Grant is a voluntary program. Simply put, the institution states that they do not discriminate based on sexual orientation and gender identity. So again, it's very clear that when we talk about the student, it can still follow them to another institution.
Yes, but where would you propose that student go? Because what you're asking of the institution, or what you're asking is either for the students to go elsewhere, and there is no elsewhere because there's just not enough slots, or for the institution to undermine the principles of its own faith, which is not a great situation either way, right?
Sure.
So are we just telling students they don't get to go to college?
No, what we're saying is that any institution that receives public funding within the state of California should adhere to the same civil rights that we are all afforded. As clearly stated, that the institution shall not subject the student or employee of discrimination based including sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. So within the purview of the state of California, if you are receiving public taxpayer dollars, which is a voluntary program, the institution must submit and just state that we do not discriminate.
I completely understand that. Completely understand that. My question is, the penalty isn't on the institution. The penalty is on the student. And so where are those students to go, particularly considering the fact that at some of these institutions, it's 50% of the student body?
Well, my sense it would be that if there is over 50% who receive Cal Grant funding in the institutions that you've described, that the institution would see that this is an unacceptable move and that they would need to implement such positive affirmation statements.
So even in cases where institutions have had no complaints of discrimination, they would have to undermine the principles of their own faith or turn away 50% of the student body. Is that really what we're trying to achieve?
What we're trying to achieve is making sure that we don't have any discrimination. And I respect the position that you're in, but I think there's a difference in where we're at on.
Okay, as long as there's an understanding of the very real consequence of what this bill achieves, intended or unintended, it will be a very real consequence. And I'm not sure that that's in the best interest of the vast majority of California students. And then my second question was, do we have the authority to take away a federal right?
to take the federal right for the exemption, it's a voluntary. If the private institution would like to seek a waiver of Title IX, that's up to them. So we're not forcing them by requesting a waiver. Again, there are many options moving forward for example of the choice. Whether or not they seek the waiver or not is up to them. Many do not seek the waiver. Many of the institutions of the association do not seek waivers.
Right.
So we're not forcing anyone to do anything of that nature.
Mr. Levine?
I think he was going to.
If I could help address some of those, would that be all right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Great. So I think one of the important points to highlight here is this is, frankly, a subsidy to a school. A Cal Grant is a source of state subsidy that allows
To a
the
student,
school,
not to a school.
but it subsidizes the school to continue educating these students, right? So it is a subsidy to the school as well. And really, this is an issue of separation of church and state, frankly. If a school is interested in pursuing its rights as a religious institution, then there's nothing to stop that school from doing that. They just can't also simultaneously benefit from California dollars in order to, frankly, advance that discrimination. And just to be clear, as the analysis points out, we're talking about 4 schools in California that actually would fall under this bill as it's currently drafted and currently have both existing Title IX waivers and are participating in the Cal Grant program, which is frankly a rather small number, and students would be able to choose from any number of other private institutions in addition to the existing state systems. It's not as if the option is just these 4 schools or CSU and UC schools. There are a number of other options available in California besides just those. So
Okay.
I hope that's helpful.
To be clear, and then we'll move on. But to be clear, I understand what you're trying to achieve, and I'm not even suggesting I agree or disagree with that. I understand what you're trying to achieve. What I'm asking is if we've been really thoughtful about where the penalty is being placed, and an understanding and a recognition that the consequence of this policy will be putting thousands of students, displacing thousands of students from their schools. And that's just the point I wanted to make clear.
Mr. Levine.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Michael just made my point for me, so thank you. It's like you read my mind. This is these Cal Grants essentially become a giant state subsidy of these private institutions, and so what we need to do is make sure that our state's values are represented, and that our students are able to go to institutions that support the values that they want to make sure that they're surrounded by. And perhaps these institutions will change or they will wane while new institutions are able to take their place. But while it's directed through a student, this is how, if we look at a portion of any of these schools' budgets, what proportion of that budget is funded through the Cal Grant? And, when they start creating their financial aid plans for students, they are looking at the public subsidy that students are going to bring to those institutions. That's how these institutions finance themselves. And a large part of how they finance themselves. So I think this legislation is completely appropriate. And Mr. Michael, thank you for raising that point.
Mr. Williams.
Well, I'm going to support the bill because I think that when in doubt, we should always err on the side of inclusion. But I appreciate Mr. Levine's point, but I would just ask the author and the sponsor not to be so, in my view, flippant about the question at hand. You maintain that you want to protect the constitutionally established right of a religious institution to practice their religion, which includes discrimination, right? That's a long-term established constitutional right because we don't force religious institutions to, say, hire people that are outside of their faith or practice things contrary. Now, I always have argued, and I'll give you a personal anecdote. I've served on the board of a religious nonprofit. One member said, "Let's establish a discrimination policy." And I said, "Well, against who?" And they said, "Well, against LGBT individuals." And I said, "Well, if we establish that policy, I would also ask that you establish that against fornicators so that I can't serve on your board anymore." because at the time I was living with, my girlfriend. And I felt like that sent the right signal, and they dropped that immediately, right? So we should, I think, fight for inclusion within religious institutions, and I do. But I also don't believe that we should be telling religious institutions contrary to their rights. I think the question is here that this is bringing up, and I think it's good that you're bringing up, is are these institutions religious institutions or are they academic institutions? Or are they both? When we have very different rules for academic institutions where we expect strong measures requiring inclusion and to any discrimination, and then we also have religious institutions that have established constitutional rights. I just think it's a little tougher than this has made it seem at first blush. But I also think that we are talking about most religious institutions have not asked for a Title IX waiver, which I think is what is so wonderful about this state and about the place, is that they have not asked for a Title IX waiver for this. So, after a little bit of wrangling, I just think that at this point we should default on inclusion, default on backing up our principles against discrimination. But I do think this is still something to wrestle with, is what are these institutions? Which are they? Or are they both? And if they're both, are there functions where, for instance, I would say as academic institutions, we could never permit discrimination against students, right? That to me is a no-brainer. But are there functions of those institutions that are religious in nature and should be protected constitutionally as religious institutions are protected?
So may I respond briefly?
If I might, I had a question for Mr. Michael and also for your group. And my question is, and following up Mr. Williams, on what basis do the 4 institutions, I think, that are listed in California ask and seek for and get the waivers from Title IX?
As is noted in the analysis, that was in response to the recent decisions that indicate that Title IX includes gender identity and offers protections on that basis. And I believe that the analysis states specifically that all of these waivers were sought after that and in response to that decision. So it's really about the fact that Title IX now officially is interpreted to include gender identity, and that has caused some concern for these institutions in terms of how they would address transgender students.
So you're saying that
that's
it's
our
the inclusion of transgender and LGBT students that's causing it?
And that is really highlighted in the report by Human Rights Campaign on the more national level, and the responses that are going on in other states, which granted are much more extensive, but California is sort of a microcosm of what's going on nationally.
Mr. Lowe?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The impetus particularly was 2 letters that received. One was from Biola University here in California, in which they asked for the waiver. In employment and in student life, we regard sex at birth as the identification of the given biological sex of each member constituency. We will not accept as valid alterations of one's sex at birth based on experimental variation or medical intervention. This is egregious by nature, and this was Biola. And in Fresno, certain sexual behaviors are prohibited. They are not limited to fornication, adultery, same-sex romantic relationships, and or gender identity. And it's not just narrow. They specify here it's in admission, preference in admission, recruitment, education programs, housing, comparative facilities, access to classes and schools, access to vocational education, counseling, financial assistance, employment, marital and parental status, athletics related to employment. This is the impetus for the bill at hand, because it's not just, well, we want to be respectful of religion. This is a problem. This is a pervasive problem, and we see letters as such. So this is why we are addressing this issue at hand.
And the second one was from California.
Yes, this was from let's see, the first one was from Biola, and the second was from Fresno Pacific University.
I'd just say that the latter case really kind of illustrates the need for the bill. That's pretty egregious. That's students, and that's at all levels, both the functions that are clearly academic and functions that are
I want to
outside
give
the
you
scope.
a chance to respond as well.
So the waivers, if you read the letter of response from the U.S. Department of Education, specifies that it is restricted to certain items, and as is noted in the analysis, most of it is housing. So providing student housing consistent with the faith, so in some cases requesting that students who are transgender be placed in a separate dorm room instead of a shared location. But each varies by institution. And again, the U.S. Department of Education responds with a waiver that is very, very limited into what they are allowed to do.
What is it that they're allowed to do?
So they are allowed to, in most cases, it is housing, facilities, and athletics. So determining that transgender students cannot participate, for instance, in an athletic team with their self-identified gender. In dorm room situations, that they can be placed, if it's a single-sex dorm, they're requesting some kind of accommodation so that they are in a separate dorm room. So it again
Separate
varies.
facility, apart from.
Well, a single dorm room, and if it's a single-sex dorm, yes, trying to find a different accommodation.
Separate but equal.
And again, part of the concern, aside from the Title IX, is how Section A of the bill is interpreted, which says they'll certify that they don't discriminate, which there isn't actually in that code what that looks like. So for instance, does it mean on an institution's campus, if they have a chapel or church, and that church won't perform a same-sex marriage of two students, does that mean it's discriminatory? In which case, once again, you have essentially told every faith-based institution that they either have to choose between their faith or their low-income Cal Grant students will be penalized by no longer receiving a Cal Grant they'd receive anywhere else. So it's broader than just the Title IX issue.
I'm sorry. May I make a comment briefly, or if someone else is in line, I can wait.
Mr. Linder? Come back.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to offer what I think is a very real example that I'd like to share, just in my personal scenario. Grew up in a family where, our motto was love everybody. I've taught that to my kids, my boys, and it doesn't matter, gay, straight, transsexual, black, white, Mexican, Hispanic, we love everybody. That's kind of what we do in our house. Now, my daughter is very much like that same type of mentality. I think you'd all really love her to death. She's just a very, very non-prejudicial person. I think that she's a prime example of that just love everybody vibe. Now, it was her dream to go to Cal Baptist, and she got there on a Cal Grant scholarship, or Cal Grant, with the help of, she's one of the recipients. And it's concerning to me that, and if this bill does become law, then I don't know that, and by the way, she wanted to go to the school because it's a great school. She's her faith is important to her, and again, very non-discriminatory. But this was her dream school. It's a good school. And what this does, if this becomes law, is this doesn't necessarily penalize the school. It penalizes me, and it penalizes my daughter, because it takes that option, that choice away from us. She wouldn't have been able to go to a school without this Cal Grant. So that's why if I'm going to be opposing the bill, because this is a personal situation. I don't want the choice taken away for somebody who wishes to go to the school and just has that completely taken away. So appreciate what you're trying to do, but I will be opposing.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to comment. I really appreciated Mr. Williams' statement about erring on the side of inclusion. And it seems to me very clear that if you want to err on the side of inclusion, it would necessitate a vote against this. On the micro level, this is a sledgehammer on a finishing nail. I think, based on my experience working with a number of institutions, they will end up regretfully making the choice that they can't compromise sincerely held religious beliefs, and that will lead to LGBT students not having the ability themselves to utilize Cal Grants. I can tell you a number of the institutions I've worked with are admitting happily LGBT students and attempting to work with them as best they can. And I think this would actually have the result of excluding those students. They wanted the ability to use the Cal Grants at those schools. And frankly, the LGBT groups on a number of these campuses have really been a force for good in helping to work through some of these issues and battle on this, not battle, but to work together really to try and go something that's typically a battle. I mean, we see it's a battle in the public sphere. And at the schools, I'm seeing these groups working together, trying to find ways to have students who are LGBT and coordinate with them to ensure they can attend these institutions in as an inclusive way as possible. And it seems to me that this would have the opposite effect in the end. LGBT students would not have the Cal Grants, and there would be a number of students who may not even attend those institutions, and now they won't have any LGBT students there.
Mr. Linder and I share Cal Baptist University. We've said for the 3 years that I'm not sure whose district it's in, if it's half in yours and half in mine, but we both claim it. So I am not sure why, and I've had conversation with Cal Baptist University, but I'm not sure why with this bill, an institution, faith-based institution, so it's kind of a question to you. Why would this bill hinder, or how would it force an institution like Cal Baptist to do anything different from what it's doing now? Because it's a faith-based institution, and in my conversation with Cal Baptist, they said that they have not asked for a waiver, don't plan on asking for a waiver, and that they have admitted, have LGBT students as students, admitted and graduated. Why would the passage of this bill force or push an institution like Cal Baptist to do anything different from what it's been doing?
Thank you.
Now,
I can't comment for Cal Baptist specifically because I don't have any experience with them, but I can tell you with the institutions that I do have some experience with, the issue is not that they're discriminating now, but you can see there's been a very significant change in both Supreme Court decisions, legislative action, public opinion, and these institutions are not in a position where, many of them who are not discriminating now are not in a position where they can say, sign on a document, say, we do not discriminate on these bases, because the perfect example given by my, I can't say colleague, I didn't know her or even see her until now, but the comment about the church, many of these institutions have churches. They're on the campus. The people who work in those churches are employed by the campus, and they do not perform same-sex wedding ceremonies in those churches. And they couldn't certify that they don't discriminate because, in fact, if you're including situations like that, they do. And so they have to make that decision proactively to say, well, we don't want to discriminate against LGBT students. We cannot sign on a line saying we will not discriminate, because we'd be forced to turn away a very fundamental First Amendment right that we've enjoyed since the beginning of this country.
thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, Mr. Lowe, you want to close?
Yes, thank you very much, members. I very much appreciate the robust dialogue. And I just want to bring it back just to the bill. The bill at hand is just 2 lines. Do you support institutions not subjecting students or employees to discrimination on the basis of sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression? That is the bill. I respectfully ask for our vote.
A motion by Mr. Levine, second by Mr. Jones Sawyer. Madam Secretary, if you would call the roll.
Medina?
Aye.
Medina, aye. Baker? Yeah. Baker, no. Bloom? Aye. Bloom, aye. Chavez? Chavez not voting. Irwin? Aye. Irwin, aye. Jones Sawyer? Aye. Jones Sawyer, aye. Levine? Aye. Levine, aye. Linder? Linder not voting. Lowe?
Aye.
Lowe, aye. Olson? No. Olson, no. Santiago? Aye. Santiago, aye. Weber? Williams? Aye. Williams, aye.
A2, the bill is sent to appropriations? Appropriations. I'll leave it open for
Thank you very much.
absent members to add on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We can go ahead and lift the call. We don't have, yeah, we do. We had one bill on call. That is AB 1711, and I will lift the call.
Okay. Olson. Olson not voting. Santiago. Santiago, aye. Okay. Levine not voting to no.
Yes.
Yeah.
Reconsideration.
Right.
Okay. 5-3.
Mr. Chair, did the author asked for reconsideration?
5-3. The bill did not pass, but we will grant it reconsideration.
Okay. Okay. Oh. Santiago is aye, right?
Yes.
Yeah, 6-3.
6-3.
Okay. See, item 1, AB 1594. Chavez? No. Chavez, no. Santiago? Santiago, aye. Oh, I had you as aye. Did
Yeah.
you
First one.
Did you have it? We're physically here.
First one was on smoking.
You have it as an aye? Yeah, I had it as an aye. That's funny. Okay. So. I know. It's 10-3.
10-3. If AB 1594
Okay.
passes.
AB 1653. Baker? Aye. Baker, aye. Chavez? No. Chavez, no. Lowe? Aye. Lowe, aye. Santiago? Aye. Santiago, aye. 12-1.
AB 1653, 12-1. The measure passes.
AB 1726. Baker? No. Baker, no. Chavez? No. Chavez, no. Williams?
Aye.
Williams, aye. So 10-2.
AB 1726, 10-2. The measure passes.
AB 1778. Chavez? Not voting. Chavez not voting. Irwin? What number is that? 1778. Irwin, aye. Linder? Aye. Linder, aye. Santiago? Aye. Santiago, aye. 11-0.
AB 1778, 11-0. Measure passes.
And AB 1888. Weber.
And Baker to abstain, please.
Okay, and Baker, no to abstain. So it's 8-1.
AB 1888, 8-1. Measure passes.
Change.
There was one request.
AB 1653, aye to not voting.
Okay, AB 1653, Olson, aye to not voting. So that makes it 11. Yeah, no. So that makes it 11-1.
Do you have to say it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. AB 1653, 11-1. Measure passes.
Okay. Did you know this one?
Okay, AB 1888-81, the measure passes. We are adjourned.